I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried, will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Listeners, I have a little bit of a different direction I'm going with this show because of what I'm filling my life with more these days, which is different kinds of art. And so I was reached out to by my next guest, David Robatin, and his work is amazing. And I just thought how great that we can talk to the man himself, find out why he does what he does, and so on. So without further ado, David, welcome to Mental Health News Radio.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell our listeners, a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I like the fact that you called me an artist because I enjoy that part of my life. I have a regular day type job where I'm a creative director at a marketing agency, but what I really enjoy and get the most satisfaction out of is the work that I do sort of in the art world, that to me allows me to sort of reach into a different area of life. And that is what kind of caused me to seek you out a little bit, because my work, a lot of my work, is born from being in recovery and recovering from alcoholism, and beyond that, just dealing with the trials and tribulations of being upright, I guess.
Yeah.
Sort of emotional and spiritual and physical and otherwise. But that's where I get to explore those things sort of in my own safe space, and then I get to show them, and then that kind of allows for a conversation. And I found that having those conversations, allowing that dialogue, has been really extremely helpful in not just my recovery, but how I operate in life in general.
How does it work for you with, you've got your day job and then you come home after work or on the weekends, and then I'm interested in that piece where, usually people go to work, they do their day job, and then they come home and they're exhausted and they have to deal with the bills and the dog and the cooking and the, doctor appointment and what have you. And so any kind of hobby tends to or can get pushed to the side, especially when you're struggling with, mental health issues. And that can be addiction. That can be, it can be so many things. So when did it start for you where you could just sort of go, okay, well, I'm going to, instead of sit here and be exhausted and try not to be in my head, how were you able to go, I'm going to go into this other room, or I'm going to go in and I'm going to spend my time creating art?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing for me is that it is, if I'm looking for an outlet, or, maybe some people come home after work and they go to the gym, or they walk the dog, or they have a conversation, or whatever. I go to meetings and paint, that's my therapy. It's really helpful to me. So that's why I think, you know, uh, my day job is my day job, and I love it. I love being in that world, and I'm good at it. I think that I don't really consider the art part a job.
Right.
Um, it's so much more than that. I am trying to turn it into more of a profession, avocation, and make more of it in my life. But the funny thing is that I've had this kind of outlet since I was a kid, and I was very, I don't know if self-sufficient is the right word, but I would be able to be alone for long periods of time.
Mhm.
And part of what I would do was I would draw, and I would create. And, my mom tells me stories about, when I was pregnant and sick with your sister, you used to sit there and just draw and play with cars, and you were just quiet the whole time, and you were wonderful. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure that was the beginning of my isolationism. Uh,
Right.
but
I was the same way, by the way. My mom called it my staring time. 'Cause I was making movies in my head from the
That's
time I
right.
was a little kid.
That's right. And so when I went to, through high school, and then I went to college, and I was an art minor, and I experienced all of these different kinds of art, photography, life drawing, painting, and sculpture. And I loved it, I really took to painting. And I started at that point is when I started this kind of style that I have, that I called it, I termed it emotionalism, because I think that that's really at the core of what it is that I like to do with my art, which is express these emotions that I have been bottling up. Um, and then, so as I got older, and as alcoholism took over, it got it got so bad where I felt like I didn't have anything good to say, or I didn't have anything that would come out of me that was good.
Mm.
And that was on the way to that bottom, right? I just didn't feel worthy of anything good. I didn't feel like I could offer anything good, or um, I, I have said this before. I didn't have anything of beauty that I could produce.
Mm.
I was not I wasn't, it's not that I didn't believe in certain, like it's not that I didn't believe in God. I just didn't think that I was worthy of having something that good in my life, you
Right.
know. And that, my isolationism, I, as I drank more and more, and got worse and worse, I felt like all I wanted to do was be left alone, right? I got it. Don't worry about me. Just leave me alone. I'll be good. And then eventually I was, which was like the worst thing, to be completely alone, or feel like you're completely alone, when really what I desired was connection, was this ability to communicate. And after I got, sober with the help of a local hospital, um, my my sister, had, she was pregnant, and she was having her first kid, and I did a little drawing, and it was the first time that I had really gotten back to this thing that I loved. And I wound up doing a painting for her, and she still has it. It's in her daughter's room. Her daughter's name is Legan. She's adorable. Um, but it opened this door And all of a sudden, all of these things just kept tumbling out of me. They were words, and they were, phrases, and they were, images and sketches. And as I got, into sobriety and started like living my life, this just became part of it. As I grew, this idea grew in my head that that I could produce, that I could make something that said something not only to me, but also opened the door for other people.
That's fantastic. I know you work with other people too on having this connection. Am I correct in that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what is that like for you? Taking someone who has abandoned art, or if they've never done it, or, and helping them get to a space where they feel comfortable to try something new.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's just kind of having the conversation. And I don't necessarily think of it as like a art guide or anything like that. If
Mhm.
For me, it's like, if you want to write, you should write. If you want to paint, you should paint. If you want to take pictures, take pictures. If you want to go hiking, go hiking. I think that an individual's creativity or connection to either the outer world or something greater or something more personal, outward, inward, whatever it is, comes out in so many different ways that, it could be listening to a symphony, you know. It
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean having to produce something. For me, it is connection. And a few times in my life, I've had the opportunity to talk with people about, in particular, art, and working with, a local church who has a gallery and a workspace, a studio that helps people express themselves through art, and that's just rewarding. I don't think that anybody should be closed off to this idea of, well, it's not for me. I think it's for everybody, in some way.
Right. Right. I mean, if painting isn't someone's thing, they don't have to do that. But yeah, doing something that you're for the just the act of doing it,
Mhm.
especially those of us that, struggle with what's going on in our mind. It's a great soothing outlet for that.
Yeah, so find something you're passionate about, and it can be even be work. I've had this discussion with people too, is that, if you're passionate about your job, if you're passionate about what you do professionally, that can be a creative outlet as well. It just doesn't have to be a 9 to 5. It can be much more than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I know I used to draw and was very good at it and all these things, and then I had a life event where at 12 where just all of that went out the window. There wasn't room to
Mm.
do anything more than um exist during that period of time. So I've been trying to I put everything then into work. It's always been work, 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 work. And that's fulfilling until it isn't,
Mhm.
when it's just that. So, yeah,
Mhm.
finding other outlets, that you don't even have to show it to other people. You don't have to share it if you're not comfortable.
Yeah.
I wrote a short story that I published under a pen name, and that was very rewarding. So, yeah, it's like however you can come to a place where you find that space for yourself, it's like it's a natural SSRI is how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's very powerful. I think that for me, it did start out as something that was intensely personal, and it was putting these thoughts and feelings down, because I was a worrier. I still probably am too much of a worrier, but the things that would keep me up at night, would be something that happened 20 years ago,
Right.
or something that I would relive on a loop. And every night I would think about it for a week. And by, the end, by 2 o'clock in the morning, I was all spun up and wide awake, and being able to get something down on paper, being able to put something in an image, create some output was I think the process of me getting that out of my head so that I didn't have to keep reliving it every time. And that's the thing about recovery, is that it forced me to look at all of those things, right? I was the kind of alcoholic that my desire was to just erase the day,
Yeah.
right? And just, here it is. It's the end of the day. I'm just going to black this one out and move on to the next day. And the thing about it is that all of that stuff was still there the next day.
Right.
So I have to do the same thing. And that just became an endless loop, and ultimately unsustainable. But then, you take away that crutch, you take away that solution, and all of that stuff is still there. And now it needs to be dealt with in a more healthy way. And so recovery, going through whatever process, and whatever process anybody has to go through to get sober and stay sober is wonderful. And mine happened to include this outlet, right? Happened to include me talking, thinking, emoting all over a canvas or an artboard in color.
Hmm. How do you set yourself up for a session? I'm just going to call it a session, or, where you're going to start creating something. Do you play music? Do you light incense? Do you what are some
Yeah.
things that you do, or do you not do any of that?
Yeah. So the bits of inspiration, the moments that I get, are usually like anything that I can find to write something down on at the time. And it's a Post-it note, it's a napkin, it's a scrap of paper, it's the back of an envelope. And those things just come, and they have been for the past 15 years. And the good thing is that they just keep tumbling out of my head. But the challenge is that they just happen at any given time.
Right. You're
So,
like,
uh,
well, I'm at Lowe's and I'm using the restroom. What am I going to write on this inspiration I just had? I get it. I
Hopefully
totally
it's
do.
just on the bathroom wall. I no, yeah. And the great thing is that I get those inspiration. I get that influence. I get that spurt of energy or creativity or whatever it is from anything. I can be just thinking about something, watching TV, having a conversation, going somewhere, driving somewhere, anything. I see something in a magazine, I see something online, if there's anything, and it just kind of hits me. And what usually happens is, like, I get a phrase, or I get a word, or I get a thought, I get an emotion, I get something that I remember, I get something that is painful, or something that's pleasurable, if that's a word. And no matter what it is, I feel like I can do something with it. And trust me, not all of them are good ideas. In fact, a lot of them are just terrible ideas. So they don't go anywhere other than, oh, I had this sketch, and boy, does that look terrible. And that's it. But what happens is, then I kind of refine it a little bit, and I'll go to my sketchbook, and I'll do a little bit more formal exploration. But by the time it gets to something on a canvas or an artboard that I want to formalize, I will have sketched it out, and then I take that to a larger format. And I usually do a color pencil sketch on a board or a canvas, or an outline of something, and then I start painting. I don't have like a ritual. I don't have a thing. I don't have enough room to have a studio, so it's on my high top in my living room, and I just kind of go at it.
Yeah, but that's nice. I mean, it's really nice to have that outlet. Mine is podcasting now, conversation. I absolutely know that this has saved my bacon, so to speak, in so many ways. To have had this for the last 10 years has been incredible. But it's also spilling your guts out in public. And I don't mean like just the stories, just like, the vulnerable moments, shared that are out there for anybody to listen to and critique and all that stuff. And that part can be challenging, certainly to process, especially if you're really raw. So how do you deal with that? Or is that something you don't have to deal with when you create something and then other people are going to see it and have their own reaction?
Yeah. I mean, I had a big challenge of, who thinking to myself, nobody wants to see this. Nobody cares about this.
Right.
And realizing that I care about it and that's what matters. And if that is the only benefit that I get out of it, which is I get to put something down, I think that it's worthy of, a frame, and I can put it up and look at it, then, so be it. But what has happened is, and I'm amazed actually at the level of openness that people, they'll look at it. I'll have some paintings up at a show, and I'll be there, and people will walk by, and some people will just walk right by and glance and just move on, and that's okay because it doesn't. My work is, I think, is pretty specific, right?
Right.
Very abstract. It's very colorful, and it's very emotional, and some people would like to have a thing that matches their couch, which is fine.
Right.
My stuff doesn't necessarily fall easily into that category, but the reward that I now get is that when people do connect with something and they look at it and they look at the title of the painting, and you had mentioned something in an earlier conversation about, there was one that, what was it? It was called The Fear I Felt. Then the fear I felt turned into hope. Right. And so they will look at that painting and they will look at the title, and then they'll kind of pause, and then they'll go back and they'll look at the painting again, and they'll look at the title again. And I can see something happening, right? I can see something clicking with them. And then they'll turn to me, and I can have a conversation with them, and they are so open about what that means to them. Right. And we have this, sort of on the spot emotional connection and discussion about, I remember when I went through XYZ, and I can relate to that, and we can share that, So now it's not just like somebody coming up and going, well, I like blue and red, and that's why I like that painting, which again is fine.
Right.
But I try to put a title that gives the person who's looking at it some insight into why I did what I did.
Right.
And if you want to name your painting Blue Number 2, then that's fine. But I try to tell a little bit of a story so that in that interaction, there is this connection to it. And it's probably why that's probably why they're not flying off the shelves. But when they do connect with someone, it's on a very personal level, and they're really open to sharing that message with me. And
Great.
then there's this thing now, right? It's not just somebody looking at a painting. It's somebody who's looking at the painting and considering what it means to them because it has relevance. And then I get to have that discussion. So now there's this whole thing out there, right?
Right.
Now there's a connection between the work and the person and me and the message and the emotion, and now it's out there, and it's okay that it's out there. And I think that that's part of healing. And I don't think just for me, I think that that is a healing experience, to be able to recognize a difficult time in your life and be able to share it with a perfect stranger, no less. And I think that creates some positive energy.
It does. And we were talking before we hit record, we were just talking, and I was like, oh, I got to write this down. We got to talk about this on the show. So here's one of them that I clicked on that I resonate with. Says, how many hearts will you touch today?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes along with what we were talking about. Now, when I see this, not that you asked my opinion, but anyway, I'm going to tell you anyway. Not opinion, what it resonated with me is, I have this woman named Martha. She's my closest friend, and I would call her a shaman, but she would never call herself that. She's a healer, and which we all can be, and can strive to be that. But anytime I go and do some work with her, the minute I get on her table and she takes me through a meditation, the longer I've done it, the more I see what always looks like a circle of people or beings that I feel like those people are my team on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And they're helping me out with whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing here. A lot of which I'm not consciously aware of because I'm human, right? And this is my experience here. Not to get too woo-woo, but that's for a different show on the network. But anyway, that painting makes me think of like my team, that's up there helping me navigate this journey. So anyway, that's what I saw when I saw that particular one, and a lot of them that you do, I see that. And that's my interpretation,
Mm-hmm.
which is everybody's going to have a different interpretation. But along with what we talked about going out and choosing to be kind, not just like, oh, I'm going to go out and if I see someone, I'm going to be kind. No, like actively choosing, I'm going to go out to the grocery store or to the wherever, and I'm going to actively be kind to however many people I can. What
Yeah.
a wonderful goal to have every day. You know what I mean? And to be conscious of it.
Yes. Yeah. And I can't do that all the time.
Right.
And maybe with more, with more spiritual development, I can become more spiritually minded, but I'm not. Ultimately, I think a lot about myself, but the good thing is that other people are out there. And I really believe this. I really believe that those moments are inspired by something outside of me and and them. But that is like, I've had like so many like flagpole moments where I can point back to, in the past 15 years or so and say, boy, that was a moment, right? That was a moment that I can look back on as significant, that changed things. And it doesn't even have to be, I got a new job or I fell in love or what. They don't have to be burning bush moments.
Right.
They can be little things,
Oh my
but
gosh. And some
wind
of
up
those,
being
yeah.
so significant.
Yes. Yes.
And I think those people are kind of like little, like you were talking about, they're your team. Those are the angels that have appeared in my life. People, either spend a short time in your life or they spend a long time in your life or somewhere in between. And even those people that show up in your life just for a short period can have, these super important the super important influence, and it just takes, someone in your orbit for a very short period of time, and they can have a significant impact.
Absolutely. And I just was talking about this with my friend Martha about, when you have abandonment issues from childhood trauma, and you carry that, into your adulthood, you can really have a hard time letting go of people that, their behavior isn't healthy for you, and also people whose behavior was really healthy, but it's just you lose touch. And if you
Mhm.
struggle with that abandonment feeling, hanging on, past the point that was the reason for this connection, it can be really painful, and so it's kind of interesting how I kind of monitor where I'm at with my stuff, where, oh, okay, so this, yeah, a couple of people are kind of out of my life now.
Mhm.
Nothing bad happened, but we just don't there's not the connection that was so important at the time that there was a connection. We've been hanging on to them too. And then we just kind of realized we don't need to do that, but God, I love you and I wish you well, on your way. And the fact that I can do that now, whereas in the past I would have like been clinging like a cat, to a ledge,
Mhm.
hanging on for dear life. It's kind of interesting to be able to just, oh, that is part of this human experience. People come and go, and
Yeah.
some plunk down and, you know, are there. Like, I can't figure out why I still talk every day to my ex-husband. We've analyzed it 1,000 different ways. We're never going to get back together. It's not that kind of relationship, but you know what? We're just friends, and he's going to be here until one of us is gone, is not alive anymore.
Mhm.
And that's okay too.
Yeah. Right. And I have to confess, luckily I have Post-it notes near me, and I just took a note down for an idea. So I'm gonna steal one of your thoughts and put it into a painting.
Go for it.
Um,
That's probably be the one that I want.
but I like that idea of being able to let go, right? It's so, for me, control is one of the biggest. Surprisingly, I mean, I usually think of myself as kind of laid back, but I'm really not,
Yeah.
when it comes to trying to manipulate the outcome of a situation. And I'm working. It's something that I have to work on constantly. But that thought of like, listen, I can do the footwork, I can put in the effort, but I just need to be able to let it go at some point. And more of me is not necessarily the solution to anything.
Oh my
Just
God,
like
you sound like me. More of me here is not
it's not
really,
the answer.
it's not only not required, it just isn't a good idea.
Right. Right. Yeah. If it's going well, I should just add more of me and it'll get better, is not a mantra I should live by.
Me neither. Oh my God, that is so funny. Yeah, me neither. I'm right there with you. How do you process things like, when you realize that your ego is getting involved with something, and we don't have to use that word ego, but that more of you thing? How do you kind of, because a lot of it, we just go into auto mode,
Right.
and it's like, how soon do you catch it and go, oh, okay, this is where discernment plays a key role, also some loving detachment. So
Yeah.
where do you
That
sit
that's
with that?
been, and I think it comes back to that control thing, is that I want to be able to fashion how this is going to come out in my life.
Hmm.
And whether it's a work situation or a personal relationship or a family relationship, I have over time gotten better, but I don't think that I am where I think that I should be. I think that I should be better by now. But I don't, before it used to last a long time. I could wallow in something, or I could fight in my head something for a very long time,
Right.
until it just wore me down and it just made me so tired that I was forced to let it go. And over time, over continually trying that method, I get less and less tolerant of the pain. So
Mhm.
for me, it just has, it's a learning through pain experience.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, I guess it's maturity too, I
Right.
suppose.
Thank
I'm just
God for aging, right?
I'm just older now,
No,
and
but
I
isn't
have
it
less
so
tolerance
great?
for discomfort.
Yeah, aging is wonderful. I mean, I know people get freaked out about it, but I really, at the hard part is when I do look back at some of my behavior and go, "Ugh,
Mhm.
well, that's where I was at that time."
Mhm.
But the fact that you can grow out of it, like,
Yeah.
wow, how amazing. You can actually move beyond these things and not have them, be attached to you like you're carrying, like you're a barnacle, just carrying debris everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, attached is a great descriptor for it, those things that are attached. And, I have tools to get those things off of me, right? I mean, I
Right.
can I can talk to a friend about it. I mean, part of what my process is in art, in painting, in writing out these phrases and thoughts and then turning them into sketches, is I think that's part of letting those things go, or being okay with them. I like the movie, A Beautiful Mind, where he has these, he's schizophrenic and he has these other personalities in his life, or I don't know the technical or medical term for those entities, but he just gets to a point where they're still there, but he just accepts them.
Yeah.
He's able to live with them. And I think that that's part of my my character defects are always going to be there. My idiosyncrasies are kind of always going to be there, but I can learn to live at peace with them, and
Mm.
and not let them control me. And I think that that whole thing is part of it. I get to go to a place where I can have a safe space where I can talk about these things, and I can talk about them with you. I can share them in a painting, or a drawing, or I can talk to a close personal friend, someone that I love, and be able to share that. And as soon as I start talking about it, it gets less and less. That the weight gets lighter.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. And oh, yeah, when you find those people that you can do that with. That's why I love being in the mental health space, because the chances are greater, far greater, that you're gonna be able to connect on a much deeper, more vulnerable way with another human being in this space. Whereas outside of it, of course, that happens too. Outside of it, I go for when the odds are in my favor. So I'm going to stay in this field because of that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so I I like I said before, I think that, all I wanted was connection, but the
Mm,
only way that the only thing that I knew was distance, right? The only thing that I knew was to kind of wall myself off. That's the only behavior that had given me any sort of peace of mind. And it wound up, being exactly the thing that almost killed me. But what I really was after was this connection, was in some way to connect with people about these these ideas, or these feelings and emotions, or issues, or problems, or all of the mushy stuff. And I guess the only thing that I had sort of boxed myself into was pushing all of it out. If I didn't like one feeling, I pushed all of them out. And
Yes.
and now it's to a point where I'm okay with being a little broken. I'm okay with being an emotional wreck. I'm okay with being uh, overly sensitive. Not all at once, hopefully. I'm okay with being happy. I'm okay with feeling serene and at peace. I'm okay with being loved and loving. At times, these things can kind of pop up and catch me off guard, and then I revert a little to my old behavior, but for the most part, I feel like I'm okay being in these spaces now.
Do you think that you were just born in, it's just part of who your internal makeup is, that you went in within yourself and were quiet as a kid and all of that, or were there other things that sort of pushed you in that direction?
Um, I definitely think that I had that tendency. I was always um, someone who was okay with being alone. Um, but I think, you talk about childhood stuff,
Right.
divorce, abuse, whatever, at whatever level it is. And for me, so there was a variety of those things in my life. So I think that added to it.
Hmm.
Um, it- but I mean, it was a coping mechanism, and it was something that I felt comfortable with, right? So if I felt comfortable, isolating or retreating, then if something was going on in my environment, I was okay with retreating and feeling like I had a safe space in my head.
Right.
Um, I think that it's like with anything, if I rely on one thing too much, it's going to wind up coming back to bite me. If
Right.
I'm too much of a saver, I'll start saving shit that fills up an entire room, and that's not good, right?
Right, that's the addiction piece. I get that too.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
anything that I come to someone and I'm like, "Oh, I don't do this anymore," because I have learned, but there is that piece of me that's like, I can sell, right? So, "Oh, yeah, get involved in this thing," and it's helped me sell and help me, build the network and blah, 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 blah. But then
Sure.
also there's okay, that's not putting my energy into that which I'm naturally gifted at doesn't help. It turns it into addiction, which then becomes unhealthy. So I do a lot of, okay, you don't have to love
Mhm.
everything. You can
Yeah,
just, I love it.
balance, I think, is a good word for how to how to try to manage those things. And I do that. I am in the exact same way. As soon as I start liking something, I love it, and
Yes.
boy, get out of the way.
What makes me think of that is, the book of Mice and Men,
Mhm.
where Lenny, the big guy, I love this bunny rabbit and I'm gonna squeeze it and I'm gonna
Squeeze,
hug it, and then,
squeeze 'em.
oh, and this bunny, and now the bunny's dead.
That right. Yeah.
That,
Yep.
I totally can relate to that.
Yeah, and that's the whole more of me thing, right?
Right.
I can be in a situation that is going just wonderfully, and all I need to do is stop, and it will be fine.
Right.
But my instinct is, I can make this better. It's perfect as it is right now, but I can make it better
Yeah.
somehow. And you know what the answer is? It's more me. Um,
Right.
I do have you talked about that hanging on, and that's the thing that I wrote down, that idea of hanging on so much that it can be painful.
Yeah.
But there is something to that, and it's comfort, right? I feel comfortable with that thing, so I'm going to try to make it better or bigger or fuller or take up more room in my life, and it just needs to be what it is.
Yeah, and, you were talking about, that you went to this safe place with isolation, that's
Yeah.
where you go anyway, and also other things contributed to that outside of yourself, and it's kind of fascinating to examine that because, I did that as well, and I did it, and it was, I mean, God, we are such brilliant creatures. Boy, can especially kids, like, you can create a safe space in the midst of hell,
Mhm.
to deal with what's going on, to cope. But, what happens as you get older and it's no longer safe in my head?
Mhm.
That's the last place I need to be, and how to
Right.
get out of that. So it's been it's been an unwinding of that to where now I can put myself to sleep by creating a movie again. I've come back to that. I couldn't do that for about 20 or so years because it became my internal world was unbearable,
Mm.
just unbearable. And so I love it that now, I could go right now and I could go lay down and take a nap and guide my way into a nap by writing a movie in my head. That's a lovely movie.
Right.
The amount of control that it takes for me to do that, like I have the skills, the tools, like you mentioned, and the niceness towards myself, the compassion towards myself, all of that to be able to do that. And it's so great when we can go back to those places that made us safe and then they became unsafe. And then we kind of figure out, well, how can we go there and just get the bits of it that really work and not get into the whole zoom of it.
Yeah. And I do the same thing. I do the same thing with colors and forms, shapes,
Mhm.
where at night I can think about them and they no longer spin me up. They don't create anxiety. They create peace and release and comfort. Um, and then it was about how I feel about myself. I don't know where that came from. I don't know where a negative self-image comes from. I mean, obviously there are a variety of ways that it can be
Right.
input from external forces, but I don't think that was I don't think that it was my case. I didn't have that from my parents or my siblings.
Mm.
And I don't know exactly where it came from, but that idea of that I didn't have anything that could come out of me that was any good. Like, I don't know where I got that idea, but boy, did I feed it, right?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
now I think that every time that I do create something and I think that it's beautiful, right? Somebody else might not think that it's beautiful, but that doesn't count. If I think that it's beautiful, if I think that I have something, of value inside of me, I think that it's such a 180 from where I was,
Yeah.
right? That dark sort of sucking feeling that is inside your chest that, there's this, like, like the feeling of less than nothing,
Yes.
to where now I don't have that pit anymore, and
Mm.
it's taken every bit of this time to get to where I am. And I had to go through all of the things that I had to walk through to get to this point. But if I look back from now and when I started that, or even before, you know, when I was, sort of spinning outward, out of control and headed towards my bottom, um, that feeling just doesn't exist anymore, which I think is remarkable. And that's the power of connection. I really believe that. And my recovery is based on that. The first real relationship that I had with someone was a person that I shared with about this, getting sober and being, wanting to recover.
Right.
And that just doesn't happen to me. So, I'm so grateful that I was able to start this, and then to have the art be part of it and be, sort of in lockstep with everything that I do and be part of that feeling that I have beauty inside of me has been really remarkable.
It's nice to move about the world when you have plunged to the depths within yourself. It's nice to move about the world with, this is such a tired expression, but it's so true, with like your own cup is full because you filled it, and maybe you filled it with connections with other people, and that's okay. You filled it with things outside of yourself, with things inside yourself, but things that actually fill it in that way that, I don't know, I feel like you just sort of walk taller, not out of ego, but just out of, I have substance and value and merit in this world, and I can just walk even into the grocery store carrying that with me. And that came from learning how to fill my own cup in healthy ways.
And you can see it. I think that people can see it. I think that people can, they're drawn to it. There are people who, and you don't have to always have some sort of horrible trauma in your life to be this kind of person. Some people are just normally like that, which astounds me. But
I'm like, what? Are you an alien being? What are you? Yeah.
Who taught you that? Yeah. But sometimes it comes from, like you were saying, it comes from that that place of zero, right? And it starts from there. And I think that it people act it. They don't just, pay it lip service. They don't just talk about it. People show it, and that's where I think that when I see it, in people, I think it's just so attractive,
Yeah, it is. It used to scare me. Somebody with healthy boundaries scared me. They scared me. They just scared me because I was raised that boundaries are bad, right? So, and it was so many fits and starts of learning how to say no. I just had I was afraid to say that word. So to be, and what's interesting is when you come to this other side of it, which, you're always on the journey. I'm going to need to tweak from where I'm at now, even though where I'm at now is pretty darn good. It still needs to be constantly tweaked and managed and whatever. And that's fine. That's part of what we're doing. But it's interesting to have people come to me and me to witness, oh, yeah, they don't have any boundaries. They're making this whole thing about this whatever that's going on, and that's coming from how depleted they feel inside, and I'm the one saying no in the loveliest way possible. But to be that person that I used to be afraid of, and now I'm it, and I notice, oh yeah, they're struggling with this, and that's what I looked like and sounded like, and that's how I behaved. And so to be able to see that and have all this compassion, yeah, I know that journey,
right. And be available,
right?
Be available to accept that into your life,
right?
I think that I think is probably the most remarkable thing, that perfect strangers can open themselves up and allow, me being this damaged person into their lives and share how they got from point A to point B, to show me that it's possible and that I can do it too.
Right, exactly. And your journey is how you did it. You don't need to copy you can copy if that is if it motivates you to get moving in that direction by copying someone, my God, go for it. As long as you're not hurting that person or someone else, but do that until you find your thing that's unique to you. That's pretty amazing. So, David,
yes,
what do you think about in terms of, or do you think about, future, and what am I going to do next week, or how am I going to do this? Like, do you go there, or do you just, is it healthier for you to just stay in the moment?
Well, I think it's probably both. I've definitely learned that I can't live in the future, and that doesn't serve me well at all. It just makes more sleepless nights, right?
Right.
And I can feel them coming, I can feel those nights coming. It's like I am not living now. I'm living, 5 years from now. But there's certainly got to be more in my mind that this particular part of my journey, my life, definitely has so much more opportunity. And I try to, I try to explore new and different ways. And that was part of this brainstorm that I had to reach out to you, which is, how can I share more of this? How can I share more of this connectivity? And I think that I just keep on trying to find new ways to do that, and it'll work itself out.
Absolutely. Plant little seeds. And I've said this on shows, so listeners, I apologize. I know you've heard this, but David hasn't heard it out of my mouth. Okay, so I'm going to say it. Was the type that I would go plant many, many seeds, like, oh my God, can I plant some seeds? And the problem was that within 3 minutes of planting everything, I had to go back out and dig it up and see if it was, taking root. Now I plant as many seeds as possible. I don't even realize I'm doing it. I'm just doing it. And whatever bears fruit, fantastic. But I do not go out and dig up that garden to make sure that it's bearing fruit.
Right. Is it working yet? Is it working yet?
It does, actually. It does. I'm so much better about, okay, let it go. Let that.
It's like the kid in the back seat asking his mom, "Are we there yet?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Every 3 minutes.
Right. Like my son, we lived in Southern California and we would be driving to Long Beach and he'd go, how long is Long Beach? Like, we've been in the car for 3 minutes. Calm down. But anyway, okay. Please tell our listeners where they can find out and see your beautiful work and get in touch with you.
Absolutely. It's just my name, David Robatin, DavidRobatin.com. And all of my work is up there. I have a gallery section that shows things that are available and things that are sold. And if you want something that is sold, I can either make a print or recreate it as a commission. But I like people just going to check it out and letting me know what they think. So there's also a section on the website where you can hook up with an email and send me a message and we can have a chat.
I love that. Of course, I love that. Look at what I do, for my living, but
Exactly.
awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you reached out. I love these kinds of conversations. So this is perfect we're doing this on a Friday. It's a rainy Friday for me in North Carolina. And this is like, I've got your art, that one painting up, the how many hearts will you touch today, and then just above that I'm looking at the most gorgeous trees and rain coming down and my two little goats looking at me like, why are we not in the barn? It's raining. But how great is that?
It's a good scene. It's an interesting scene to picture.
Right.
These goats talking back and forth to you.
Oh yeah, all of my animals sit and stare at me, waiting for what I'm going to do, as if I'm the most fascinating creature on the planet. I'm so not that, but I'm so glad to them that they just, anytime I'm feeling like, God, I just say the dumbest things. Why am I so weird? Why am I so odd? One look at my dogs and I'm like, I'm such a good person. So anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll have you back again.
I appreciate it. I really enjoyed talking to you, not just right now, but in the discussions that we've had. And I hope to continue that discussion. I think it's important. Thank you.
Absolutely. I do too. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. Please go check out his website. It is and treat yourself to maybe some early Stendhal syndrome. If you don't know what that is, Google it, Stendhal syndrome. It's a real thing. It's part of how art makes you feel and that you can become overwhelmed by it. So if you go to his website, David's website, you might get some of that. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next show.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin Sonanta Walker, and thank you for listening.
And I can ride the low, low, lows with me. I can ride the low, low, lows with me till my vision clears up.